Hey everybody, this is Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin. We had so many new show submissions for the contest, we've opted to create a page where you can listen to all of them at your own pace. Visit letstalkbitcoin.com/contest to peruse the entire set, and feel free to vote for more than one. We'll be selecting multiple shows to join the network in Q1. Enjoy the show, and remember to vote at letstalkbitcoin.com/contest.
It's like sunshine, sunshine is fine. I feel it in my skin, warming up my mind. Sometimes you gotta give in to win. I love the days when it shines. Whoa, let it shine. Sunshine, sunshine.
Hello, and welcome to the Sunshine Hour. My name is Ian Mickey, and I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to do this. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Today, on the Sunshine Hour's inaugural podcast, we will go for a half hour. In the future, we'll have guests and interviews and all kinds of fun things. However, for today, we will take a look at the premise of the show itself. Then we'll roll into NSA spying, a little bit of a history of the NSA story over the past couple of 3 weeks. Then we'll take a look at a couple of Bitcoin stories and potentially wrap up with... there's a lot out there with school-to-prison pipeline and the drug war. There's just so much. But 30 minutes, that's all we got. So we got to stuff it in there. So very quickly, the premise of the show is that there is so much out there with regard to media and with regard to duplicity in the media and duplicity on the part of the government that the average American quickly, it's not even American, it's the average sort of individual quickly loses track of what's real and quickly loses track of what's important and quickly loses track of the truth, because what we're told in the media is not the truth. What we're told is the story that we are to buy to maintain the status quo, to keep those in power, and continue to support policies and behaviors that, remarkably enough, aren't even in our own best interests. Yet, we will dive in. So there you go. Our job here is to shine a light, the sunlight on these stories, so we can see them for what they are. We can see them for attempts to maintain power and control, and we can do something about it. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this NSA story over the past, let's say, 3 weeks. And to start, we will begin with Candy Crowley on CNN's State of the Union, which isn't journalism. I don't know what it is. It's entertainment, I guess. Candy Crowley's like a clown, and she, in this instance, had both Mark Rogers and Dianne Feinstein from California, and she kicks it off asking Dianne if over the course of the war on terror and the money spent and whatever, if we are any safer.
I don't think so. I think terror is up worldwide. The statistics indicate that. The fatalities are way up. The numbers are way up. There are new bombs, very big bombs, trucks being reinforced for those bombs. There are bombs that go through magnetometers. The bomb maker is still alive. There are more groups than ever, and there is huge malevolence out there.
Bombs. Big bombs. Bombs, trucks to hold bombs. Reinforced trucks. Numbers up. Bad. It's awful. So Dianne Feinstein is very concerned. She is concerned about us, and she wants to make sure that we're safe. And in the process of making us safe, she wants to make it very clear just how risky the world is, just how risky the world was, just how risky the world is continuing to be, and perhaps that risk getting even greater. So, getting that sobering assessment from Dianne Feinstein about the tremendous risk we're under, I would imagine that Candy would be very concerned about that. She might say something like, "Gee whiz, Dianne, we've spent lives and treasure in Afghanistan, civil rights for safety. We fought a war on terror for years, and we're still no safer? I wonder if all of that stuff is really not worth it."
So, Congressman, I have to say, that is not the answer I expected. I expected to hear, oh, we're safer, Do you agree?
Well, instead of doing that, Candy decides to lob a softball to Dianne Feinstein's partner in crime on the Intelligence Committee, Mark Rogers.
They've now switched to this notion that maybe smaller events are okay. So if you have more smaller events than bigger events, they think that might still lead to their objectives and their goals. That makes it exponentially harder for our intelligence services to stop an event like that.
Because essentially one person can do a small event.
Absolutely.
So the ball was tossed to Mike Rogers, and he dutifully took it and ran. I know I'm mixing my metaphors here. Took it and ran with it, and essentially agreed with Dianne Feinstein and noted that things are worse, things are scarier, because now, and I think that hasn't this been a concern for years, that now one person can cause a lot of havoc, and that one person is what we need to look out for. Of course, they couldn't stop that one person in Boston, but there you go. The one person, he's dangerous. Mike is trying to fear us, so he's doing his best to instill the type of fear necessary to goad us into the kind of behavior he's looking for, which, of course, is to submit gleefully to NSA spying. NSA and whomever else, right? Whomever else wants to keep us safe, because they're only trying to keep us safe. So, next week on Candy, are Mike McCall and Adam Schiff. And they essentially want to echo what Dianne and Mike noted. However, I think they were aware that they came off as just fools. Just the manipulation was pretty thick and pretty easy to see through. So they've got some less transparent fearing to do.
I think a lot of programs, policies we've put in place since 9/11 have prevented a 9/11 style attack. On the other hand, I think the threat has become greater, not lesser.
Greater. It's greater, not lesser. I will spare you Adam Schiff. I'm tired of him. I listened to the clip, and there's nothing important in what he has to say. Essentially, we have four people who are convinced that we should be feared. The fear should be deep inside us and should encourage us to support them in all of their endeavors to keep us safe. So with that in mind, let's harken back to June of this year when Admiral Alexander, the head of the NSA, was addressing Congress.
In recent years, these programs, together with other intelligence, have protected the U.S. and our allies from terrorist threats across the globe, to include helping prevent the potential terrorist events over 50 times since 9/11.
Over 50 times since 9/11. We've heard that a lot. Mike Rogers from the Intelligence Committee, he said that a lot. We see it in the news. It's one of those talking points that we are to have sort of drilled into our head to know why we need to submit to the NSA spying. However, on closer inspection, it simply doesn't bear out. Here's Senator Ron Wyden on the PBS NewsHour.
The head of the NSA, Keith Alexander, said in testimony that 50 terrorist plots had been foiled by this exhaustive surveillance. You don't buy that. I mean, you're a member of the Intelligence Committee.
Congressional testimony doesn't support that proposition. In fact, John Inglis, one of the deputies there, when he was asked to actually unpack that assertion, that really found, when he had to address it specifically, that it was at most a couple.
Only a couple. Only a couple. Now, Senator Wyden serves on the Intelligence Committee, but he probably doesn't want to be too confrontive with Admiral Alexander. However, Federal District Judge Leon doesn't have any difficulty with that at all in a case brought by Mr. Klayman. Apparently, Mr. Klayman brings a lot of suits. However, in a suit brought by Mr. Klayman, District Judge Leon calls the NSA's programs almost Orwellian and notes that not a single instance in which analysis of the NSA's bulk metadata collection actually stopped an imminent attack. So clearly, Senator Wyden is attempting to toss an olive branch to the NSA. And finally, to put a bow on this story for now, we come to the venerable CBS television show 60 Minutes and the shameful promotion of the NSA that they engaged in this past week. There's much to be looked at here, but I'm not going to dive in to the degree that perhaps it's necessary. We'll touch on two quick points and then wrap for now. The first, and truly the most Orwellian,
to talk to us because he believes the NSA has not told its story well.
We need to help the American people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And to put it simply, we're doing two things. We're defending this country from future terrorist attacks, and we're defending our civil liberties and privacy.
Ignorance is strength, freedom is slavery. So it really couldn't be any more clear than that. And for those of you who watched it, you know that it was just catastrophic. And speaking of catastrophic,
one they did see coming was called the BIOS plot. It could have been catastrophic for the United States. While the NSA would not name the country behind it, cybersecurity experts briefed on the operation told us it was China.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to tell tales out of school, but it was China. So let's learn more about this catastrophic, fear-inducing Chinese plot.
One of our analysts actually saw that the nation-state had the intention to develop and to deliver, to actually use this capability to destroy computers.
To destroy computers?
To destroy computers.
Uh-oh, this is no joke. They want to destroy our computers.
So this basically would have gone into the system that starts up the computer, runs the systems, tells it what to do.
That's right.
And basically turned it into a cinder block.
A brick.
And after that, there wouldn't be much you could do with that computer.
That's right. Think about the impact of that across the entire globe. It could literally take down the U.S. economy.
You just think about that. You just think about what you've done. You just think about that for just one moment. You questioning the NSA, questioning what we're doing for you. If we weren't here for you, protecting you, the Chinese would be infecting your computer. No Facebook. Have you ever thought of that? No, I didn't think so. So the 60 Minutes that comes in with a great reputation, really shameful behavior with these NSA folks. And right now, we've kind of come to a close in our chapter of the fearing of America. So what I'll leave you with here is the simple thought that if somebody has to frighten you into compliance, that simple fact alone should relax you to the point that you realize what's happening is nothing more than manipulation. So let's talk about payday lenders and the underbanked. Payday lenders, of course, are those who will make high-interest short-term loans to folks, and essentially these folks often are referred to as the underbanked because they're not in a bank, and therefore they've got to use these payday lenders, who often have higher fees than banks. They often charge up to 4%, sometimes up to 11% for astronomical APRs, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000, 2,000%, not unreasonable. So, considering these realities, most times these folks are referred to as, well, they're just not that smart. They're going to a payday lender when they could be going to a bank and saving a tremendous amount of money. But of course, there's market realities that encourage payday lenders, and this gal at PBS NewsHour took a look at those market realities and found out that it essentially boiled down to two things: transparency in banking and speed with which the folks got their money.
She soon discovered that just getting quick access to their money, as opposed to waiting for a check to clear in a bank, is a big reason poor customers use check cashing services, despite fees that nationally average about 4%.
They're having to pay fees to cash a check.
Yep.
Isn't it better to do that at a bank where it costs almost nothing?
In fact, a lot of people did have bank accounts, and a lot of others had bank accounts and didn't any longer.
Servan interviewed customers for her research, and she says one reason banks are seen as more expensive is a lack of transparency about fees. Many customers didn't know what the fees were and when they were going to hit.
When you walk into a check casher, you see the fees for every service is posted in huge font, and you walk into a bank, and there's no signage at all.
So folks go to payday lenders because they get their money faster and there's transparency. Banks, they get their money slower, and the opaque nature of banks is clear. So what do we know about the world that could help these folks? So historically, they didn't have much choice. There was the bank, and there was payday lenders, and there is cash, and there's not much way around all of that. Now, however, with cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, there may be an opportunity for these folks to break free of some of this, and there may be an opportunity for payday lenders to help them. I don't believe payday lenders are evil people. I believe payday lenders are responding to the fact that folks want their money faster, and they want transparency in the interaction. So why not introduce Bitcoin into that arrangement and see if the two services that payday lenders offered folks couldn't be improved? I don't see why, and I don't have any answers here. I just noticed the problem, and I see that there's a tool out there that didn't exist historically, and this might be something to help folks. I wonder if part of that loan might go towards purchasing Bitcoin, and any appreciation in that purchase would be shared between the lender and the lendee. Now, I'm aware that the appreciation of Bitcoin isn't written in stone. However, let's say one engages in that type of transaction and Bitcoin doesn't appreciate. Okay, well, they get their money back of the money that they've purchased in Bitcoin, and they pay a fee. Well, they're no worse off than they were prior going in. However, in this instance, the payday lender could potentially make more money. The individual getting the loan could potentially make more money. And ultimately, the folks who engage in this type of loan are exposed to a type of currency that meets their needs in a unique way that was never possible before. See that expand in their community, and maybe they don't need banks or payday lenders. So let's move on and discuss the militarization of your local police force. There are two stories that I wanted to look at to illustrate the point. The first being in the Indianapolis, the Indy Star, the Indianapolis newspaper. The second in BillMoyers.com. So we'll deal with them one at a time. The Indianapolis paper notes that spying isn't just for the NSA, spying on the American people isn't just for the NSA, and it isn't just for the federal government, it's for police departments as well. Indianapolis is simply an example. There are 25 departments across the United States that have apparently purchased this device called a Stingray. The price is $373,995. And I'll mention that because it's about the only specificity we'll get in this article. The Stingray is apparently a device that looks like a cell tower to cell phones and allows local police departments to gather data on phone calls, texts, and movement. The Indianapolis Police Department refuses to divulge any information about how this device is used, what authorization is needed to use the device, what's done with the information once it's gathered. However, in the article, it notes that in other instances where the Stingray has been used, Miami police used it to track protesters, and South Carolina used it to essentially drop an electronic dragnet on folks who were committing burglaries and stole a gun from a sheriff's SUV. So we all know that this isn't police work. This is a police state. This is dangerous. This is the kinds of things that we have to protect ourselves against. So, the next story, to add more context, relates to the fact that our local militaries have been receiving equipment from the Department of Defense, the Department of War, for a number of years. And the latest, I think it's unclear exactly what type of equipment they've been getting or what type of equipment they have. However, the latest is what's known as an MRAP, Mine-Resistant Armor-Plated Vehicle. And there are apparently 18 of these, probably more, in local police departments, being used for things like what? I don't know. Drug busts for... That's the question, isn't it? What do they need with this MRAP? What does a local police department need with a $500,000, 18-ton, mine-resistant, ambush-protected, armored vehicle used in war? Used to typically protect from ballistic arms fire, minefields, IEDs, nuclear, biological, and chemical environments. It would certainly be laughable if there weren't, and I was wrong, there's not 18 of them, that's 18 ton. There's 165 of them in local police departments. So it would be laughable if we didn't all know that there really isn't a need for these in our local police departments. And the growing police state is such that there's a good chance it's going to be used against us. Now, if us means drug dealers, or us means murderers, us means rapists, I'm not going to support murderers and rapists. These are folks who are aggressing against others, and something needs to be done about them. But we don't need 18-ton armored vehicles to do something about it. That type of threat, coupled with the technology in place to track us, is a growing threat of the police state. Now, Earlier I talked about fear and how if someone attempted to fear you, you were appropriately to ignore them and feel confident that this was an area of manipulation. So I'm not going to say be frightened, but I am going to say be sober. Be aware that that's out there, and be aware that these people may or may not have your best interests at heart. So we'll end on a high note. Let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin and the co-optation of Bitcoin, the attempted co-optation of Bitcoin by J.P. Morgan. So I'm referring to an article in RT.com about the title is Bitcoin Beware. J.P. Morgan seeks patent for rival online payment system. So J.P. Morgan has all of a sudden, of their own volition, decided that there are too many transaction fees on lower cost items, and they're going to create webcash. And webcash is something that's going to allow real-time payments, with frictionless, low transaction fees, allowing anonymity of payments on the web, and it's going to be controlled, of course, by J.P. Morgan. So does that remind you of anything? Yes, indeed, Ian. It reminds me of Bitcoin. So there's a couple of things about this. One is that this is good, right? You know, one of the things that VCs apparently ask, I've heard, is when they see a new product is, well, does this product have any competitors? So if there are no competitors, the product, can't be that in demand. I mean, I imagine other folks would want to jump into that market as well. So JP Morgan is jumping into the Bitcoin market. Good for them. It harbors very well for Bitcoin. That's the kind of thing that I think Bitcoin enthusiasts would be pleased with. However, I look at J.P. Morgan's attempt at Bitcoin. It reminds me of a movie called Beyond the Sea, which I'm sure many of you have seen. And if you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's a tremendous film. In it, Kevin Spacey plays Bobby Darin, and Bobby Darin was this big 50s star, and he sang Splish Splash, Mac the Knife, very Sinatra style. It was nice. It's good stuff, and you can look into it, and you'll like it. It's good stuff. Anyway, at the end of his career, Bobby Darin started to lose popularity, which, no surprise, right? That's kind of the way of the star. But he didn't like it, and he wanted to get back into the public spotlight. And this is in the 60s. And of course, the 60s, the anti-war movement was big. And during the anti-war movement, there were all kinds of protest songs. And Bobby Darin believed the best way to popularity was to create his own protest song. And his protest song, ironically enough, was, I think it was named Freedom. It was actually named A Simple Song of Freedom. So in his attempt to be relevant, he sang the kinds of songs that he expected the world to engage in. He wanted to be just like the cool people, and so he sang Simple Song of Freedom. And I cannot help but see that story in J.P. Morgan's patent filing for webcash. I just hear Bobby Darin singing Simple Song of Freedom. So that's the podcast for today. Thank you for listening. I had a great time. I hope you did too. I look forward to doing this again soon.
Never sung before, and let it fill the air. Tell the people everywhere, we the people here don't want war. Hey there, Mr. Black Man, can you hear me? I don't want your diamonds or your game. I just want to be someone known to you as me, and I will bet my life on the same. So come and sing a simple song.
If you enjoyed the show you just listened to, visit letstalkbitcoin.com/contest and send 0.1 millibit or 0.0001 Bitcoin to the address indicated for that show. Thanks for helping.